I paid $120,000 for my daughter's wedding. I bought her a condo worth $450,000 completely furnished. And when I arrived at her ceremony, I found a 25-foot banner with my photo and the words, "This man is not welcome at this party." Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell because we have new stories every day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you are watching from. My name is Andrew. I am 64 years old, and for a long time I believed I had built something solid. A life based on respect, honest work, and unconditional love for my only daughter, Emily. Today, as I write these lines from the terrace of my house in Florida, with the ocean shining under the December sun of 2024, I can say that finally I understand what my own father tried to teach me decades ago. A man is not measured by how much he gives, but by how much respect he demands in return. Everything started very differently. 14 years ago, in the fall of 2010, my wife Elizabeth lost a 2-year battle against cancer. Emily was barely 18 when we were left alone, just her and I, in that house that suddenly seemed too big and too silent. I remember the nights when we both tried to cook Elizabeth's recipes, crying over the pots while the rice burned. They were difficult years, but we faced them together. I became father and mother at the same time. I attended all her college presentations. I helped her with her final architecture projects. I celebrated every small triumph as if it were the most important thing in the world. When Emily got her first job at a design studio in Chicago, I felt that Elizabeth would be proud from wherever she was. I taught her everything I knew about financial management, about keeping her word, about valuing people for their character and not their bank account. During those years, I built a modest but solid wealth. I had worked 35 years in the citrus export sector, starting as a simple clerk and becoming a partner in a respectable agricultural coup. I retired at 62 with carefully invested savings, a paid-off house, and the peace of mind of someone who knows he did things right. I was not a millionaire, but I had enough to live with dignity, and I thought enough to help my daughter start her own family when the time came. That moment arrived in January 2024 when Emily appeared at my house with a radiant smile and an engagement ring on her finger. "Dad, Michael proposed to me," she said, hugging me with the same tenderness as always. Michael was her boyfriend of 2 years, a 35-year-old man who worked in digital marketing. He seemed polite, although I always noticed a certain coldness in his eyes when he looked at me as if he were calculating something I could not see. But Emily was happy, and that was the only thing that mattered to me. During dinner, we talked about wedding plans. She mentioned they wanted something intimate, simple, perhaps at a small vineyard. I listened attentively and then told them something that came directly from my heart. "Emily, you are the only thing I have in this world. Your mother would have wanted your wedding to be perfect. Let me take care of everything." My daughter's eyes filled with tears. Michael, for the first time, showed a wide smile. "Andrew, you do not have to do that," he said, with a voice that pretended to be humble but sounded calculating. "Of course I do," I replied. "I will only get married once in this life, and I already did. Now it is my daughter's turn to have the most beautiful day of her life." During the following months, I sold part of my bond investments and some stocks I had kept as a reserve. The money I had planned for travel during my retirement to see Japan and tour South America, I dedicated entirely to the wedding. Emily and Michael chose a magnificent resort with ocean views. The initial budget was $80,000, but with every planning meeting, the small details multiplied. An exclusive photographer from New York imported flowers, a high-end menu with fresh seafood and French champagne. In the end, the figure reached $120,000. $120,000 that represented years of sacrifice, of waking up early, of saving every penny, thinking about the future. But every time I saw the excitement in Emily's eyes, I thought, it is worth it, everything is worth it for her. And I did not stop there. 3 months before the wedding, Emily and Michael mentioned casually that they were looking for an apartment to rent after getting married. That same night, I could not sleep. I imagined my daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love, paying eternal rent without building her own equity. I decided she deserved more. I found a perfect condo in a historic neighborhood in the city. 3 bedrooms completely renovated in a beautiful building. The price was $450,000, including the furniture the previous owner had left. Quality furniture, an equipped kitchen, everything ready to move in. I took out a mortgage on my own house, liquidated my last investment funds, and closed the deal. When I gave the news to Emily in April, a month before the wedding, I expected to see her cry with happiness. Instead, her reaction was strangely contained. "Dad, you did not have to do that," she said with a voice I did not recognize. "It is too much." I explained it was my wedding gift, that I wanted to see her established and secure. She smiled, but the warmth had disappeared from her eyes. During the last weeks before the wedding, I noticed subtle changes that I ignored then, but now looking back, I see with painful clarity. Emily stopped visiting me on Sundays, our sacred tradition since Elizabeth died. When I called her, the answers were brief, distracted. "I am busy with preparations, Dad," she always said. Michael stopped coming by my house completely. I attributed everything to pre-wedding nerves, to the stress of preparations. Never, not even in my worst nightmares, did I imagine what awaited me on June 15th, 2024. The day of June 15th, 2024 dawned with a perfectly blue sky. I woke up at 6 in the morning in my room at the hotel where I was staying a few miles from the venue. I had chosen to stay in a different place so as not to bother the couple, thinking that perhaps they wanted their space before the ceremony. How naive I was. I showered calmly, shaving carefully in front of the mirror. Every gesture was deliberate, almost ceremonial. This was the most important day in my daughter's life, and I wanted to be impeccable. I had bought a new suit, a dark navy Italian cut, a white Egyptian linen shirt, and a burgundy silk tie that Emily had given me the previous year for my birthday. "So you can wear it at my wedding, Dad," she had said, then kissing my cheek. I placed in the inner pocket of the suit my father's gold watch, the same one he wore the day he married my mother in 1972. It was a family tradition, wearing something from the ancestors as a symbol of continuity, of legacy. I felt that Elizabeth was accompanying me in that moment, that somehow she would be present on that special day. I arrived at the venue at 11 in the morning. The ceremony was scheduled for 12:30, followed by a cocktail in the gardens, and then dinner in the grand ballroom. The place was spectacular, mixed with modern luxury, towering palm trees, water fountains, the scent of the sea mixing with the perfume of thousands of white flowers decorating every corner. As I walked through the main access, I greeted the hotel staff. Some recognized me from previous planning meetings and returned the greeting with professional courtesy. I felt good, proud. I had managed to give my daughter exactly what she deserved, a setting worthy of a princess for the most memorable day of her existence. The main hall was located at the end of a long corridor, decorated with monumental floral arrangements. I could hear the murmur of voices, laughter, soft background music. The guests were already starting to arrive. I quickened my pace a little, wanting to make sure I was present when Emily made her triumphal entrance. I turned the final corner of the corridor, and that was when I saw it. Hanging on the great archway to the main hall, impossible to ignore, was a huge banner. 25 feet long, I calculated later, although at that moment my brain could barely process dimensions. The material was an immaculate white fabric with black letters at least 20 inches high, but it was not the letters that froze me on the spot. It was my face. A photograph of me enlarged to almost life-size occupied the center of the banner. It was not just any photo, it was one that Emily had taken during a vacation the previous summer, where I appeared smiling, relaxed, happy. We had spent a wonderful week laughing like we had not done since she was a child. And under my smiling face in those huge and relentless black letters, the text said, "This man is not welcome at this party." The world stopped. I swear that in that instant the sound disappeared, as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire universe. My heart beat so hard I could feel it in my temples, in my neck, in the tips of my fingers, holding the small additional gift I had brought for Emily. A pearl necklace that had belonged to Elizabeth. I remained motionless, unable to move forward or backward, while my brain tried desperately to make sense of what my eyes were seeing. It had to be a mistake, a terrible confusion. Maybe it was a bad joke by some guest. Maybe someone had placed that without Emily knowing, without Michael authorizing it. But then I began to hear the voices. "Is that the father of the bride?" said a woman with a scandalized tone. "What a shame, poor man," whispered an older gentleman with genuine compassion. "I would kick him out of my wedding too, if he were my father," commented someone younger with casual cruelty, provoking stifled laughter around him. I slowly raised my eyes from the marble floor where my gaze had fallen. Guests were everywhere. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of people circulated through the cocktail area preceding the main hall. Everyone, absolutely everyone, passed under that banner. They read it, looked at my photograph, and then searched for me with their eyes among the crowd. When they found me, reactions varied. Some looked away immediately, ashamed to be witnesses to such public humiliation. Others whispered among themselves, pointing at me discreetly. A group of young people, probably Michael's friends, observed me with mocking smiles, as if I were the unofficial entertainment of the afternoon. 420 guests, I remembered. That was the final number on the list. 420 people who had been invited to celebrate my daughter's love, paid for with my money, fed with food I financed, and all of them were now witnesses to my absolute degradation. I forced my legs to move. I had to find Emily. There had to be an explanation. I crossed the hall like an automaton, dodging waiters with champagne trays, avoiding conversation groups. The gazes followed me like spotlights on a stage. I felt my face burning, the shirt collar suddenly too tight, the air dense and difficult to breathe. And then I saw her. Emily was at the back of the hall, near the doors that led to the gardens. She wore a spectacular wedding dress, French lace, a 10-foot train, the veil held with a crystal tiara. She was radiant, beautiful, perfect, exactly as I had imagined she would look on her wedding day. She was laughing. Michael had his arm around her waist, whispering something in her ear. His parents were there too, all forming a closed circle, champagne glasses in hands. And my daughter, my only daughter, the girl I had raised with every ounce of love that existed in my shattered heart after losing Elizabeth, was laughing with a carefree and bright joy. Our eyes met for a second, just a second. I saw something cross her eyes, something that could have been discomfort or perhaps guilt, but then Michael told her something else. She returned her attention to him, and the laughter continued. There was no explanation, there was no apology, there was no attempt to approach me to take down that monstrous banner to protect her father from the biggest humiliation of his life. In that moment, standing in the middle of a hall full of strangers looking at me with pity or amusement, I understood something fundamental. My daughter had betrayed me. Not by accident, not by mistake. With full awareness and cruel deliberation, Emily had chosen to humiliate me publicly on the day I had worked so hard to make perfect. Tears threatened to flow, but I refused to give them that additional pleasure. I took a deep breath, squeezed Elizabeth's pearl necklace in my fist until I felt the beads mark my palm, and made the most difficult decision of my life. I turned around and started walking toward the exit. Every step toward the exit weighed as if I were wearing chains on my ankles. I did not run, I did not scream, I did not make a scene. Something deep inside me, something that came from very far in my family lineage, ordered me to keep my composure. My grandfather had survived war without losing his dignity. My father had faced the bankruptcy of his small business in the 80s and had rebuilt himself from scratch without ever begging for compassion. Both had taught me something fundamental. In moments of greatest defeat, the way you withdraw defines who you really are. I remembered with crystal clarity an autumn afternoon in 1986. I was 26 years old and had just lost an important job opportunity because a colleague had betrayed me, stealing my project and presenting it as his own to the bosses. I arrived at my parents' house, furious, crying with rage, wanting to destroy something or someone. My father poured me a glass of whiskey, sat me in his study, and told me something I never forgot. Andrew, a man is measured by how he reacts when he is disrespected. The weak explode and lose all credibility. The mediocre accept passively and become perpetual victims, but real men, my son, observe, learn, withdraw with elegance, and then act with intelligence when no one expects it. Those words resonated now in my head like cathedral bells. The corridor back seemed endless. The same floral arrangements that minutes before had seemed beautiful to me now looked obscene in their perfection, mocking my naivety. $700 for each of those gigantic arrangements. 18 distributed throughout the hotel. I had memorized every invoice, every expense, every dollar invested as acts of love. Now every flower was a mute witness to my stupidity. A young waiter tripped slightly on me, crossing my path, spilling a few drops of champagne on his tray. "Excuse me, sir," he muttered automatically. Then he recognized me, his eyes flying toward the banner visible at the end of the corridor. I saw pity settle on his face like a mask. I nodded and kept going. I did not need his compassion. I did not need anyone's. 3 older ladies, elegantly dressed, were grouped near an ornamental fountain. Seeing me pass, one of them clicked her tongue with disapproval. "What horror, what a lack of manners," she said loudly enough for me to hear. I could not distinguish if her comment was directed at my supposed unwanted presence or the act itself of humiliating me publicly. I did not care. I passed by them without stopping. A middle-aged man with a carefully trimmed mustache and impeccable gray suit stopped me, touching my arm gently. "Listen, I do not know what happened between you and your family, but this," he pointed vaguely toward the hall, "this is wrong. I am very sorry." His sincerity pierced me like a knife. For a dangerous second, I felt that the tears were going to defeat me. I swallowed hard, nodded briefly in gratitude, and walked away before my voice could betray me. I finally arrived at the main lobby of the hotel. The air conditioning hit my sweaty face, a thermal shock that returned some mental clarity to me. The reception staff watched me with poorly disguised curiosity. Surely the rumor had already run among them. Hotel workers always know everything that happens in their facilities. I imagined their conversations on break. "Did you see the wedding banner, the father of the bride?" Laughter, speculations, judgments. I stopped in front of the large glass doors that led outside. The midday sun shone with blinding intensity over the parking lot. My car was out there waiting for me. Freedom was a few yards away, but something kept me paralyzed on that threshold. What did it mean to cross that door? Did it mean giving up? Accepting that my daughter had the right to treat me like this? Validating in some way the narrative that Michael had evidently built about me? My phone vibrated in my pants pocket. I took it out with trembling hands. A message from Emily. Dad, please do not make a scene. It is done. Just go quietly. I read those lines 3 times. Every word was an additional dagger. It is done. As if it were an unavoidable accident like the weather or an earthquake. Something that simply had happened without human will behind it. And the implied order, go quietly. Do not cause problems. Accept your humiliation as corresponds to your new role in this story. Something broke inside me in that instant. It was not my heart. That was already in pieces. It was something deeper, more structural. The image I had of myself as a loving father who sacrifices everything for his daughter disintegrated like burning paper, and in its place slowly began to emerge a different version of Andrew. An Andrew who understood that love does not mean allowing abuse, that generosity does not imply being a convenient fool, that forgiveness cannot come before genuine repentance, and above all that protecting your own dignity is not selfishness but survival. I put the phone away without answering. I raised my head, I squared my shoulders and pushed the glass doors. The heat wrapped around me like a hug. I walked toward my car with firm and measured steps. No rush, no drama. Just a 64-year-old man who had just learned the most expensive and painful lesson of his life. When I arrived at the vehicle before opening the door, I did something important. I took out Elizabeth's pearl necklace that I still clutched in my left hand. I observed it under the bright light. Small, perfect spheres cultivated for years in patient oysters, symbol of beauty born from suffering. I put it carefully in its velvet case. These pearls would not be for Emily. Never. I sat behind the wheel, closed the door, and remained motionless for several minutes. From there, I could see the hotel entrance, elegant people coming and going, completely oblivious to the personal earthquake I had just experienced. The world kept turning with indifference. Life continued, and I would also continue, but never, ever in the same way. I started the engine and left the parking lot slowly. In the rearview mirror, the hotel became smaller and smaller. I did not know yet exactly what I would do, but an absolute certainty had installed itself in my mind like molten iron. My daughter had chosen to humiliate me with $120,000 of my money and a $450,000 condo of my assets. Now I would choose the consequences. I arrived at my hotel around 2 in the afternoon. I do not remember the drive. My brain had entered a kind of autopilot, driving by instinct, while thousands of thoughts crowded my mind like waves in a storm. I parked the car in the underground garage, went up to my room and locked the door. Only then, in the absolute privacy of those 4 white and anonymous walls, did I allow my body to collapse. I sat on the edge of the bed without even taking off my suit. My hands shook uncontrollably. I tried to undo my tie several times before managing it. That burgundy tie that Emily had given me, that I had chosen specifically for this day. I threw it to the other side of the room with more force than necessary. The phone kept vibrating. Messages, missed calls, constant notifications. I took it out of my pocket and looked at the screen. 17 missed calls from Emily. 32 WhatsApp messages. Some from numbers I did not recognize, probably guests who had witnessed the show. I turned off the phone completely. I was not ready to face any of that yet. That night I did not sleep, not a minute. I stayed sitting in the armchair by the window, watching the city lights blinking in the dark. My mind replayed scenes on a loop. The banner, Emily's laughter, the looks of pity from strangers, the cold message ordering me to leave in silence. Every mental replay was like rubbing salt in an open wound, but something strange began to happen around 4 in the morning. The dull and paralyzing pain began to transform into something different, something colder, sharper, more useful. Mental clarity. For the first time in hours, my thoughts ceased to be a chaotic whirlwind and began to organize into straight and logical lines. I turned on my laptop and opened my financial files. For the next 2 hours, I meticulously reviewed every document related to the wedding and the condo. Invoices, contracts, bank transfers, property deeds. Everything was perfectly ordered because I was a methodical man by nature. Every dollar spent had its receipt, its date, its justification, the most important thing, the deed to the condo. I studied it line by line. The purchase was in my name. I had planned to make the official transfer to Emily and Michael's name after the wedding as an additional surprise during the honeymoon. I wanted to hand them the keys along with the ownership documents as the ultimate gift. How convenient my planning nature turned out to be. At 6 in the morning on June 16th, I showered with ice-cold water, shaved again, and dressed in clean clothes. I made coffee in the small machine in the room and sat down with my notebook. I wrote a list with clear and firm handwriting. 1. Contact James, my lawyer. 2. Stop transfer of the condo. 3. Call Rose. 4. Review pending wedding payments. 5. Modify will and beneficiaries. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I dialed James's number. James had been my lawyer for the last 15 years, but more importantly, he was a friend from college. He answered on the third ring, his voice hoarse with sleep. "Andrew, what is wrong? Are you okay? James, I need you to listen to me carefully. I need your professional help immediately." My voice sounded strangely calm, as if it belonged to someone else. I told him everything, every humiliating detail. James listened without interrupting until I finished. The silence that followed lasted several seconds. "Son of a bitch," he murmured finally. James rarely cursed. "Excuse the language, but what kind of person does that?" And Emily aloud. "She participated actively," I corrected. I saw her laughing, James. She was not a passive accomplice. She chose this. "Okay." I heard the noise of papers, a chair moving. James was already getting up, preparing to work. "The condo is still in your name, correct?" "Correct." "I have not transferred anything officially." "Perfect. Then legally it is yours, and you can do whatever you want with it." "What do you want to do?" The question floated in the air. What did I want to do? All night I had avoided formulating that answer explicitly, although my subconscious already knew it. I want to sell it as soon as possible, and I want Emily to know that she will receive nothing more from me, not now, not ever. "Andrew, I understand you are furious, and you have every right, but are you sure? She is your daughter. Maybe when things calm down, things will not calm down, James. This was not a mistake in a moment of tension. It was planned. That banner did not appear by magic. Someone designed it, had it made, placed it strategically, and Emily allowed it. No worse. She endorsed it." James sighed. "All right, give me a few hours to review the documents. I will call you at noon with options." After hanging up, I dialed Rose's number, my younger sister. Rose lived in Austin with her husband. She worked as a high school history teacher and was the only close family I had left. She had also been invited to the wedding, although she had told me weeks before that she could not attend due to work commitments. Now I was grateful she had not witnessed my humiliation. "Andrew, how was the wedding? Tell me everything." Her voice sounded cheerful, expectant. I could not speak immediately. My throat closed up. "Andrew, are you there? What happened?" I told her. This time my voice broke several times. Rose was the only person before whom I could allow myself certain vulnerability. She had known Emily since she was a baby, had seen her grow, had cried with me at Elizabeth's funeral. When I finished, I heard Rose crying on the other end of the line. "My God, Andrew! I cannot!" "How could she do that?" "Emily. Our Emily. I do not know who Emily is anymore," I admitted. Rose stayed silent for several moments, processing. Then her voice changed, acquiring a more serious tone. "Andrew, I have to tell you something. About 3 months ago, Emily called me. She was weird distant. She told me she was worried because you were becoming very controlling with the wedding plans, that you wanted to impose your ideas, that Michael felt you were trying to separate them." I sat up straighter. "What?" I told her that was ridiculous, that you were the least controlling man I knew. But she insisted. She said Michael had opened her eyes to certain toxic patterns of behavior. Those were her exact words. Toxic patterns. The rage I had been holding back all night finally found a clear target. Michael. This had Michael's fingerprints all over it. "She kept calling me during the following weeks," Rose continued, increasingly convinced that you were a problem, that they needed to set boundaries, that her new family with Michael was her priority. I tried to reason with her, but eventually she stopped calling me too. I thought it was prenuptial nerves. Everything fit with terrible clarity. Michael had executed a classic manipulation manual. Isolate the victim from their support network, rewrite family history, plant seeds of doubt and resentment. And Emily, my intelligent and educated daughter, had fallen completely into the trap. Or maybe she had not fallen. Maybe she had chosen to believe that narrative because it suited her. "Rose, I need you not to talk to Emily if she contacts you. Can you do that for me?" "Of course. I am on your side, brother. Always." We hung up after a few more minutes. I looked at my to-do list. I had already completed the first 3. It was time to execute the rest of the plan. Emily had chosen war. Now she would learn that her father, the man she completely underestimated, knew how to fight with intelligence she never saw coming. The next 6 days were a whirlwind of methodical activity and decisions that would change everything forever. James called me exactly at noon on June 16th as he had promised. His voice sounded professional focused. "I have news. First, the condo is completely in your name, and there is no legal impediment to selling it. Second, I reviewed the wedding contracts. There are 2 important payments that have not yet been processed completely. The final buffet and the floral decoration. They total $25,000. They are in the bank clearing phase, which means we have a window of approximately 72 hours to stop them if we act fast." I sat up in the chair of the small hotel desk where I had set up my makeshift operations center. "Can we stop those payments legally?" "Yes, but we need to move fast. It is you who signed the contracts and who ordered the transfers. You have the right to cancel them before final clearing. The vendors will not be happy, but legally we are covered. Do it. Cancel everything you can." "Understood. Now about the condo. I have a contact, a Portuguese investor who specializes in city properties. I spoke to him about the property this morning without giving personal details. He is interested. He can close fast in cash, but obviously he will offer less than market value. How much less? He calculated $430,000. It is $20,000 less than what you paid, but the transaction could be completed in a week, max 10 days. $20,000 of loss. Money I had earned with years of sacrificed work, but the alternative was worse, giving that asset to a daughter who considered me so despicable she had publicly announced my rejection. "I accept. Proceed with the sale." "Andrew, once again, are you completely sure? There is no going back after this." I have never been more sure of anything in my life. During the following days, my hotel room transformed into a makeshift legal office. James sent me documents by email that I printed in the hotel business center, signed and scanned back. The Portuguese investor, a Mr. Rui Cardoso, turned out to be exactly what I needed. Discreet, efficient, and without unnecessary questions about the reasons for such a rushed sale. On June 17th, I received a furious call from the catering service manager. I had managed to stop the payment just in time. "Mr. Andrew, this is completely unacceptable. We fulfilled our service. The food was served, the staff worked. You cannot simply cancel the payment. Check the contract," I replied with a calm voice. Clause 7.3 establishes that the client has the right to dispute charges if the service does not meet agreed expectations. I did not authorize my investment to be used to humiliate me publicly. I consider that a fundamental breach of the spirit of the agreement. It was a creative interpretation, probably unsustainable in court, but the manager had neither the time nor desire to start a long legal process for $25,000. After 30 minutes of tense negotiation, we reached an agreement. They would return $15,000 and keep $10,000 as partial compensation for services rendered. I accepted. Recovering something was better than nothing. On June 18th, I performed another crucial task. I drove back home and went directly to the office of my financial manager, Albert, a bald man in his 50s who had managed my investments for a decade. "Albert, I need to make important changes to my beneficiary documents." He opened my file on his computer, adjusting his glasses. "Sure, Andrew. What kind of changes?" "I want to remove Emily from my life insurance, from my pension plan, and from any investment account where her name appears." Albert looked at me over his glasses, surprised. "That is... Well, it is a significant decision. Are you sure? Emily is your only daughter." "I am completely sure. And there is more. I want to designate new beneficiaries." I spent the next hour working with Albert on the complete restructuring of my assets. As main beneficiaries, I designated 3 organizations: a foundation for elderly care, a local charity, and the Cancer Society in memory of Elizabeth. These institutions will receive everything, not a dollar for Emily. Albert typed in silence for several minutes, printing forms that I signed methodically. When we finished, he handed me copies of all the documents. "Andrew, I do not know what happened between you and your daughter, but I am very sorry you had to make this decision." I did not respond. I did not need explanations or compassion. That same afternoon, I visited my notary, Mr. Thompson, a 70-year-old man with whom my family had worked for generations. His firm was in an old building with high ceilings and dark mahogany furniture. "Andrew, what a pleasant surprise. How can I help you?" "I need to modify my will." Mr. Thompson's smile faded slightly. Wills were serious matters, especially when the client arrived without notice with an iron expression on his face. I explained the changes I wanted. Mr. Thompson took notes with his antique fountain pen, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he left the pen on the desk and studied me carefully. Andrew, my professional obligation is to ensure that you fully understand the implications of these changes. You are effectively disinheriting your only direct descendant. I know, let her receive nothing and everything goes to the same charities I designated with Albert. I want every financial decision I make from now on to benefit people who really value family, not those who destroy it. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly and began to draft. The process took almost 2 hours. When I finally signed the new will before 2 witnesses whom Mr. Thompson summoned from his office, I felt something strange. Not pain, not vengeful satisfaction, but simply relief. The relief of knowing I had taken control of my life again. On June 20th, James confirmed that the sale of the condo was practically closed. Mr. Cardoso had transferred the deposit and his lawyer was finalizing the papers. The final signing would be on June 22nd. That night, sitting on my terrace with a glass of red wine, I performed the most symbolic and definitive action of all. I took my mobile phone, which I had kept off for days, and turned it on. 143 missed calls from Emily. 287 messages. There were also messages from Michael, some common friends, distant cousins. Everyone wanted explanations, mediations, reconciliations. I went to WhatsApp settings. I blocked Emily's number. Then I blocked Michael's. Then I went to my phone contacts and deleted them completely. Their email addresses too. Blocked. Facebook, Instagram. All social networks. Blocked and deleted. In a matter of 10 minutes, Emily had disappeared completely from my digital life. She could not contact me even if she wanted to. No more pleading messages. No more attempts at justification. No more emotional manipulation. On June 22nd, I signed the deed of sale for the condo. $430,000 were transferred to my bank account. Money originally destined to be Emily and Michael's nest now back in my hands. I invested it immediately in conservative funds in my exclusive name. That night back home, I calculated the final numbers. Of the $120,000 for the wedding, I had recovered $15,000. From the condo, I had lost $20,000 in the quick sale. In total, my decision to completely cut Emily from my life had cost me around $125,000. It was the most expensive price I had ever paid, and also the most necessary. Emily and Michael returned from their honeymoon in Greece on June 28th, exactly 13 days after the ceremony. As Rose would tell me weeks later, they had spent those days at a 5-star resort posting idyllic photos on social media. Romantic sunsets, dinners by the water, perfect smiles. The image of absolute happiness. They landed at the airport around 3 in the afternoon. Michael had rented a car to pick up their bags and drive directly to the downtown condo. Their apartment, as they surely called it between themselves during the whole honeymoon. The gift from the foolish and convenient father-in-law who had paid for his public humiliation with $450,000 in real estate. According to Emily, she told Rose subsequently in a desperate call. Michael was euphoric during the drive from the airport. He talked about the furniture they would change, the minor renovations they would make, how finally they would have their own space without depending on rent. He had even calculated how much they could save monthly by not paying rent money they would invest in trips and luxuries. They arrived at the historic building near 5 in the afternoon. The doorman, an older man named Stephen, who had been working there for 30 years, stopped them in the lobby before they could get on the elevator. "Excuse me, are you Emily and Michael?" Emily smiled, probably assuming the doorman recognized them as the new owners. "Yes, it is us. We are coming to settle into the 4th-floor apartment." Stephen's expression became uncomfortable. "I am afraid there is a misunderstanding. That apartment no longer belongs to Mr. Andrew. It was sold 6 days ago. The new owners took possession yesterday." The silence that followed must have been deafening. Emily tried to process the words, surely thinking there was some administrative error, some confusion with the papers. "That is impossible," intervened Michael with a tense voice. "The apartment is ours, a wedding gift. There must be a mistake." "There is no mistake, young man. I myself helped the new owners with the move of some boxes yesterday. Mr. Cardoso and his wife, a very nice couple, have already changed the locks." Emily took out her mobile phone, her hands shaking, according to her own later account. "She tried to call me. The call did not go through. It went directly to an automatic message. The number dialed is not available. She tried WhatsApp. Her message never showed the 2 blue checks of delivered. She was blocked. "Call the damn lawyer who was supposed to manage the transfer once and for all," snapped Michael, his voice rising in volume in the elegant lobby. They called the lawyer they had hired to review the property documents, a certain Beatrice. The lawyer answered on the second ring, and Emily put on the speaker. "Miss Beatrice, this is Emily. We are at the apartment, and they tell us it was sold. There must be a terrible mistake." An uncomfortable sigh on the other end of the line. "Emily, I tried to contact you during the honeymoon, but you had your phone mostly off. Your father sold the apartment a week ago. The transaction was completely legal. The property was in his name. He had full right to sell, but it was our wedding gift." Emily's voice broke at that point. Verbal wedding gifts have no legal validity if there is no official transfer of ownership. "I am very sorry, but there is nothing to be done. Your father acted within all his legal rights." Michael snatched the phone from Emily. "This is fraud. We are going to sue. That old son of a bitch cannot do this. Mr. Michael, I suggest you moderate your language. And no, you cannot sue. You have no legal basis. If you wish to consult with another lawyer, you are in your right, but I tell you in advance that any competent colleague will tell you exactly the same." The lawyer hung up. Emily and Michael stood in the middle of the lobby with their suitcases full of memories from Greece, while the doorman Stephen watched them with a mix of pity and curiosity. They left the building in silence and got into the rental car. Once inside, according to what Emily narrated to Rose, between sobs, Michael exploded. He hit the steering wheel repeatedly, screaming obscenities. Then he turned to Emily with a fury she confessed never having seen before. "How could you be so stupid? How did you let this happen?" "It was you who insisted on putting that banner. I said it was too much." There it was, the truth finally emerging under pressure. The banner had been Michael's idea, although Emily had agreed, probably with reluctance, possibly with doubts, but finally she had chosen loyalty to her new husband over respect for her father. What was it, a joke? "Your father was supposed to understand it as a joke," Michael lied blatantly. But no, the sensitive old man had to get offended, and now we are left with nothing. $450,000, Michael. We just lost $450,000 for your damn joke. The argument escalated for almost an hour in that parked car. Michael blamed Emily for not handling her father better. Emily cried, defended, attacked. Michael revealed finally in his uncontrolled rage fragments of his true plan. Convincing Emily during the previous months that I was a controlling and toxic father had been strategic. The more distant she was from me, the more she would depend on him, and with the apartment in her shared name and access to my resources, he would have secured a comfortable financial future. "What did you say?" Emily looked at him with growing disbelief. "Are you telling me that all this time you have been manipulating me?" Michael tried to backtrack, soften, but the damage was done. The words had already come out. They ended that night in Michael's small rented apartment, barely 500 square feet, in a less prestigious neighborhood. The contrast with what they had lost was brutal. Low ceilings, old furniture walls with humidity. This was going to be their home, not the spacious condo with its high ceilings and luxury finishes. During the following days, Emily desperately tried to contact me through all possible means. Blocked calls, messages that never arrived, emails that bounced. Finally, she remembered Rose. She wrote dozens of messages to my sister, long paragraphs explaining, justifying, begging. Michael had manipulated her. The banner was a terrible mistake. "Please, Rose, intercede, convince me to talk, fix this somehow." Rose consulted me before answering. I gave her permission to answer only once, with a message I dictated myself. "Emily, you publicly humiliated the man who gave you absolutely everything, the man who raised you alone after losing his wife, the man who emptied his savings for your happiness. You did it in front of 420 people. Every action has its consequence. This is yours. Do not contact me anymore." Rose told me that Emily called her crying hysterically after receiving that message, that she and Michael fought constantly, that her marriage barely started already showed deep and ugly cracks, that she was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what she had lost. But it was already too late. The doors she had closed with that banner would remain closed. I had made sure of that. On July 5th, a Tuesday afternoon, I was in my study organizing documents when I heard a noise at the main entrance of my house. The unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock, the door opening with that familiar squeak I had always promised to fix but never did. I got up immediately, my heart racing. Only 2 people in the world had keys to my house, me and Emily. She still kept hers from the years she lived here, from the thousands of times she came in and out freely when this house was both hers and mine. I left the study and saw her standing in the hall. Emily wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair tied in a messy ponytail, no makeup, eyes swollen and red from crying so much. She had lost weight, her cheeks looked more sunken. The contrast with the radiant bride of 3 weeks ago was devastating. "Hi, Dad," she said with a small voice, almost childlike. I did not respond. I remained motionless 10 feet away, observing her with the same coldness with which I would study a stranger who had invaded my property. "I needed to see you. You do not answer my calls, my messages. I did not know what else to do. So you decided to break into my house without permission. I have a key. I have always had a key." Her voice broke slightly. "This is my house too, right?" "No," I replied with a flat voice. "This was your house. It is not anymore." Emily took a step forward, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. "Dad, please, I need to explain. It was a terrible mistake. Michael convinced me it would be funny, a kind of inside joke. I never wanted funny." The word came out like a whip. "Hanging a 25-foot banner with my photo declaring I am not welcome at a party I paid for with $120,000. Did that seem funny to you?" "No. When I saw it hanging, I realized it was horrible, but it was too late. Michael said if we took it down, it would be worse, that we would draw more attention. I did not know what to do. I walked to my desk in the living room and took out a folder I had prepared precisely for this moment. Rose had sent me the photographs she took during the ceremony, documenting everything. Images she captured, thinking they would be happy memories that ended up being evidence of my humiliation. I opened the folder in front of Emily and scattered the photographs on the coffee table. In one of them she appeared clearly visible at the back of the hall, laughing with Michael while I stood alone under that monstrous banner. In another, she conversed animatedly with his parents, champagne glass in hand, without an ounce of concern on her face. In a third, taken from another angle by some guest, Rose got through common contacts. Emily looked directly toward where I was, and although she was not smiling in that precise instant, there was no horror or guilt in her expression either, just a disturbing calm. "This does not look like someone who was distressed or regretful," I said, pointing at the images. "This looks like someone who knew exactly what she was doing and did not care." Emily observed the photographs, her face breaking down more with every image. I was in shock. I did not know how to react. Michael had told me all morning that you would understand that it was our wedding and we could do whatever we wanted, that you were too controlling and we needed to set boundaries. Controlling. The word came out loaded with bitterness. "Emily, I paid for a $120,000 wedding. I bought you a $450,000 condo. I liquidated my life savings for your happiness, and you call me controlling." It was not me who said that. It was Michael. Michael convinced me for months that you had problems, that you wanted to dominate my life, that I needed to distance myself. And you chose to believe him. The silence that followed was dense, heavy. Emily collapsed on the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "You sold the condo," she said, finally her voice choked. "Rose says you changed your will, that you erased me from everything." "Correct. But I am your daughter, your only daughter." I sat in the armchair opposite her, maintaining physical and emotional distance. "Emily, let me explain something I learned very recently in the most painful way possible. Being a father does not mean accepting any type of mistreatment. Love is not synonymous with being an emotional doormat you walk on when it suits you. For years, I confused generosity with weakness, and you learned to exploit that confusion. I never exploited you, did I? Let me see. I paid for your entire college degree. I bought you a car when you graduated. I helped you with the deposit for your first rented apartment. I financed your master's degree. And when all that was not enough, you emptied what remained of my resources for an obscenely expensive wedding and a condo you never really thanked me for. I did thank you. I always thanked you. Words are cheap, Emily. Actions reveal the truth. And your actions told me in front of 420 people that I am so despicable I do not even deserve to be present at your most important moment. Emily cried inconsolably for several minutes. Part of me, the part that had raised and loved her for 32 years, wanted to comfort her, hug her like I did when she was little and had nightmares, tell her everything would be okay. But that part was no longer in charge. It had been replaced by something harder, wiser, more necessary for my survival. Michael and I are fighting all the time, she confessed between sobs. He says it is my fault we lost the condo, that I should have handled you better, that I ruined his plan. His plan, I repeated, interesting choice of words. He manipulated me, Dad. He distanced me from you, from Rose, from everyone. He made me believe horrible things about you, and I was so stupid I believed him. You had multiple opportunities to question him, to talk to me, to verify those supposed truths about my controlling behavior. You did not do it. You chose the easy way. Emily looked at me with pleading eyes. What can I do? Tell me what to do to fix this. I will do whatever. I stood up, indicating this conversation was over. There is nothing to do, Emily. You cannot unruin this. Some actions have permanent consequences. Humiliating me publicly was your choice. Living without my support, financial or emotional, is the consequence. You cannot do this. I am your daughter, and I was your father. The father who deserved basic respect. The father who sacrificed everything for you. You chose to destroy that. Now you will live with your choice. I walked her to the door. She resisted, leaving, clinging to the frame, begging for one more chance. But I had made my decision, and it was unbreakable. Please give me your key, I said, extending my hand. Emily looked at me, horrified. My key. You do not live here anymore. You are not welcome here anymore. The key, please. With trembling hands, she took the keychain out of her bag and detached my house key. She placed it in my palm. The metal was warm from being in her pocket. You will regret this, she said, with a final flash of rage between tears. No, I replied with absolute certainty. The only thing I regret is having taken so long to defend myself. I closed the door gently but firmly. I heard her sobs on the other side for several minutes before she finally walked away. The next day I hired a locksmith to change all the locks in the house. August arrived with scorching heat, typical of Florida summers, but for me it represented something completely different. The first month in decades where I lived exclusively for myself. For years, every decision I took passed through a mental filter. How will this affect Emily? Will she need my financial support? Should I save this money for her future? That filter had disappeared completely. The $430,000 from the sold condo plus the $15,000 recovered from the wedding rested in my bank account as symbols of a freedom I had not experienced since my 20s. On August 3rd, I boarded a flight to Italy. 30 days in Tuscany, a region Elizabeth and I had dreamed of visiting together but always postponed for responsibilities, for saving for Emily's education, for 1,000 reasons that now seemed absurd. When Emily finishes college, we said, when she gets married, we planned, always postponing our happiness for a future that never arrived. I rented a small apartment in a medieval village perched on the hills. Every morning I woke up with church bells ringing at 7, opened the old wooden shutters, and breathed the air perfumed with lavender and wild rosemary. I ate breakfast, strong coffee, and pastries in the main piazza, observing Italian locals playing cards and discussing politics passionately. I had no agenda. I had no obligations. I simply existed. Some days I walked through the vineyards surrounding the village, chatting with local farmers. A 78-year-old gentleman invited me to his family winery and showed me how they tasted the local wine. Life is too short to drink bad wine or spend time with people who do not appreciate you, he told me while we toasted under the wooden beams of his century-old cellar. I did not know how much I needed to hear exactly those words. Other afternoons I sat on sunny terraces with my new notebook, drawing clumsily the landscapes of cypress and olive groves. I had no artistic talent. My proportions were disastrous and my perspective non-existent, but it did not matter. I drew for the pure pleasure of creating something, of transforming what my eyes saw into lines on paper. It was meditative healing. I met other travelers in trattorias and cafes. A retired German couple who had been touring Europe in an RV for 2 years. A French professor who had quit his tenure to write a novel. A Canadian photographer my age, traveling alone after divorcing, documenting Renaissance architecture. None knew me as Emily's father or the man from the banner. I was simply Andrew, an American in Tuscany, free of all history. On August 19th, while dining alone in a family restaurant, I received a message from Rose. It was a photo of Emily she had found on Facebook through a mutual acquaintance. My daughter looked gaunt without makeup in Michael's small apartment they now shared. The caption said something melodramatic about hard times strengthening true love. I looked at the image for 30 seconds, expecting to feel something. Guilt, maybe. Or vengeful satisfaction. But the only thing I felt was nothing, a neutral void. Emily had chosen her path, I had chosen mine. I put the phone away and returned to my pasta, enjoying every bite. I returned home on September 1st with a few extra pounds from the pasta and wine, tanned skin, and something fundamental. I had recovered the capacity to feel joy without guilt. A week later, I enrolled in a painting workshop for beginners at my local community center. We were 8 students, mostly retired women who laughed at their own mistakes and celebrated every small progress. The The teacher, a 40-year-old artist with paint-splattered hair, taught us with infinite patience. Art is not about perfection, she said. It is about authentic expression. For the first time in my life, I held a brush without a productive goal. I did not paint to sell, to impress, or to achieve something. I painted because I liked mixing colors, because I enjoyed seeing how the white of the canvas transformed into clumsy but honest landscapes. I also began volunteering at a local association helping young people from disadvantaged neighborhoods develop business ideas. 2 afternoons a week, I shared my 35 years of experience in the business sector with 20-year-old kids who had ambition but lacked guidance. I taught them about basic financial management, about the importance of clear contracts, about how to negotiate with suppliers. A 23-year-old guy named David who wanted to open a mobile repair shop reminded me a bit of myself at that age. Hungry for opportunities, scared of failing, I helped him prepare his business plan. I connected him with a couple of useful contacts. When he finally opened his small shop in October, he invited me to the grand opening. Seeing his pride, his genuine gratitude filled me with a satisfaction that no amount of money invested in Emily ever gave me. Rose came to visit me a weekend in September. We sat on my terrace with a bottle of wine watching the sunset. "Andrew, I have to tell you something." She began with a serious tone. "I have never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Happy. Really happy. Not even when Elizabeth was alive, because then you were always worried about being a good provider. Nor when Emily was little, because you lived for her. Now finally you live for you." She was right. For 64 years I had defined my worth by how much I could give to others, how much I could sacrifice, how much I could endure. Emily's betrayal, ironically, had freed me from that self-imposed prison. Do you know what is the strangest thing I confessed to Rose? I do not miss her. I thought I would miss her terribly, that I would wake up crying, that every moment would be stained by her absence. But it is not like that. It is as if the Emily I loved, the daughter I thought I had never really existed, and you cannot miss someone who was an illusion. Rose nodded understandingly, taking my hand in hers. That is wisdom, brother. Painful, but wisdom finally. For the first time in months, I went to sleep that night feeling something similar to peace. September advanced quietly, but the outside world had not forgotten me. News about Emily and Michael reached me in fragments, like pieces of a broken mirror reflecting a reality that was no longer mine, but some insisted on showing me. The first uncomfortable call arrived on September 14th. It was my cousin Leonore, a 60-year-old woman whom I had not seen for 3 years, but who suddenly had an urgency to contact me. Her voice oozed that fake concern typical of those who enjoy others' drama. "Andrew, dear, I heard about Emily. What a terrible situation for everyone. But, well, you know how weddings are. There are always tensions, surely with time. Leonore, I appreciate your call, but there is nothing to discuss. But poor Emily is having a very hard time. I saw her last week at the supermarket, and she looked gaunt. And that boy Michael does not give me a good vibe. I think she needs her father now more than ever. Emily had her father available for 32 years. She chose to humiliate him publicly. The consequences of those choices are not my responsibility. Oh, Andrew, how hard you are. She is your daughter. Blood is blood. Blood does not justify abuse, Leonore. If there is nothing else, I have commitments this afternoon." I hung up before she could continue. That same week I received similar calls from 2 distant uncles and a neighbor of Emily who felt entitled to opine. Everyone recited variations of the same script. She is your daughter. You must forgive. Family is the most important thing. Think of Elizabeth. What would she say? That last phrase, invoking my dead wife to manipulate me emotionally, infuriated me more than anything else. Elizabeth had been a woman of iron principles. She had taught me that true love includes healthy boundaries, that forgiving does not mean forgetting or restoring lost privileges. If Elizabeth would tell me something now, it would be, protect yourself, Andrew. Protect your dignity. Rose, faithful to her promise, only contacted me when she had relevant information, not to pressure me. At the end of September, she called me with a particularly serious tone. "Andrew, you need to know something, not so you change your mind, but because I think you deserve to understand the full picture." "I am listening." "Emily and Michael are in serious trouble, economic, marital, everything. The apartment where they live costs a lot in rent plus bills. Michael works freelance, but his income is irregular. Emily is still at the same architecture studio with a regular salary. Between the two, they barely make ends meet." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "But there is something worse. A neighbor in their building who casually knows my sister-in-law told her something disturbing. She sees Michael leave regularly late at night, very dressed up with expensive cologne. He returns at dawn. Last week she saw him entering a hotel downtown with a brunette woman who was definitely not Emily. I felt a twinge, not of pain for Emily, but of contained rage toward Michael. That manipulator had not only orchestrated my humiliation, but now betrayed my daughter in the most predictable and miserable way. Does Emily know? Does she suspect? Another neighbor told me she hears them fighting violently at all hours. Screams, slamming doors, Michael blaming Emily for everything. That if she had handled the situation better with you, that if she were not so useless that she ruined his future. It is clear verbal abuse. And what does Emily do about it? For now, nothing. I think she is paralyzed between the pride of not admitting she was wrong with you and the fear of being completely alone if she leaves Michael. It is a trap of her own creation. That night I could not sleep well, but not for the reasons some would expect. I did not want to run to rescue Emily. What I felt was a kind of philosophical sadness for the price we pay for our bad decisions. She had chosen Michael over me. She had chosen to believe convenient lies over uncomfortable truths. Now she was reaping exactly what she had sown. On October 3rd, I received an unexpected visit at my painting class. I was focused on a landscape of orange trees when my teacher approached discreetly. "Andrew, there is a woman at the reception who insists on seeing you. She says it is urgent." I went out to the hall and found Linda, Michael's mother. A 62-year-old lady, elegantly dressed, looking at me with a mix of disdain and nervousness. "Mr. Andrew, we need to talk about your daughter and my son. We have nothing to talk about, Mrs. Linda. My son says you caused all this, that your possessive and controlling attitude led Emily to take extreme measures at the wedding." I stared at her without blinking. "Your son is a professional manipulator who isolated my daughter from her family. He convinced her to humiliate me publicly to ensure she had no one but him. And now he mistreats her verbally and emotionally, while probably cheating on her with other women. If you came here looking for me to rescue that situation, you got the wrong person." Linda paled. "How dare you speak like that about my son?" "I dare because it is the truth. And if you really care about your son, I would suggest you confront him about his behavior instead of looking for convenient culprits. Now, if you excuse me, I have a painting class to finish." I turned around and returned to the workshop, leaving her standing in the hall. Rose called me that same night laughing. Linda just posted on Facebook a cryptic message about bitter men destroying happy families. Several mutual acquaintances have asked me what is happening. Let her post whatever she wants. The truth always emerges eventually. "Andrew, I am proud of you. I know this is not easy, but you are doing the right thing. Teaching consequences is the greatest act of love a father can perform." Those words resonated deeply. All my life I had confused loving with giving in, with sacrificing, with accepting. Finally, I understood that the deepest love sometimes requires saying no, setting boundaries, letting people face the result of their actions. Emily was learning a lesson that I painfully had denied her for 32 years by protecting her from every consequence, by solving all her problems, by financing all her dreams without demanding responsibility in return. If I gave in now, if I ran to rescue her, I would only teach her that she can trample me when it suits her and still count on my support. That was not wisdom, it was complicity in my own destruction. So I stood firm, living my rebuilt life, while somewhere in the city my daughter finally faced the real weight of her decisions. On November 12, 2024, a large manila envelope arrived in my mailbox with no return address, only my name written in Emily's handwriting. A calligraphy I had seen evolve from her first childish strokes to elegant adult writing. I would recognize that handwriting anywhere in the world. I did not open it immediately. The envelope remained on my desk for 3 days, watching me like a silent witness while I painted red, lived my rebuilt life. Part of me did not want to know what it contained. I had already made peace with my decision. I had found balance and purpose. Opening that envelope meant risking that hard-earned peace. But human curiosity is powerful. On November 15th, a rainy Sunday morning, I made coffee, sat in my favorite armchair by the window, and finally tore the envelope. Inside were 8 handwritten pages. They began with 2 simple words. "Dear Dad." I am not going to transcribe the whole letter. It would be too long and painful. But the essential points were these. Emily acknowledged without excuses or justifications that the banner had been an unforgivable cruelty. She admitted that although Michael had proposed it as a declaration of independence, she had agreed consciously She wrote with brutal honesty that for months she had chosen to believe Michael's narrative about me because it was more comfortable than confronting her own financial and emotional dependence. I convinced myself you were controlling because that justified taking your money while pushing you away from my life, she wrote. It is easier to see a generous father as manipulative than to admit you are an ungrateful daughter. That phrase stopped me. I had to put the letter down for several minutes, breathing deeply, processing that brutal admission. She continued, describing the last months with Michael. The constant fights, the poisonous reproaches, how he blamed her obsessively for losing the condo and ruining his plan. Emily wrote that she began to suspect infidelities in August, when she found compromising messages on Michael's phone he left forgotten in the bathroom. I did not want to believe what I saw, she confessed in the letter. Just like I did not want to believe he was manipulating me about you. I have a terrible pattern of denying uncomfortable realities until they explode in my face. During September, she hired a private detective with her own savings. The man handed her a devastating report accompanied by photographs. Michael had maintained simultaneous relationships with at least 3 different women during the last 6 months. One of them since before the wedding. The detective documented hotel entries, romantic dinners, even a weekend in another city with one of his lovers while he told Emily he had a work conference. I confronted Michael on October 25th with the evidence, she wrote. He did not even try to deny it. He laughed, Dad. He laughed and told me what did I expect, that a woman who betrays her own father obviously does not deserve loyalty. He said he had used me to access your money, and since that failed, I was no longer useful to him. I read that part 3 times. Michael had finally revealed his true nature with crystal cruelty, and Emily, for the first time, had seen him without the filters of denial. I am in the process of divorce, continued the letter. Do not worry, I am not going to ask you for money for lawyers or anything. I hired a lawyer with the emergency fund I have. Michael and I do not share significant assets, so it will be relatively simple. I am also not going to ask you to receive me back in your life. I do not deserve that. The next 2 pages were an extensive and detailed apology. Not the superficial kind, forgive me if I offended you, but a complete acceptance of responsibility. Emily listed every specific decision she took, every moment she chose to believe Michael over her own experience, every red flag she deliberately ignored. I know I destroyed something irreparable, she wrote toward the end. I do not ask for forgiveness because I do not believe I deserve it. I also do not ask for a second chance because I understand there is no way to repair what I did. I just want you to know that I finally understand the magnitude of my betrayal, and that if I could turn back time, I would give anything to never have hung that banner, to never have listened to Michael, to have defended the father who gave me absolutely everything. The letter ended with a particularly moving note. I found among my things Mom's pearl necklace you planned to give me on the wedding day. Rose told me you carried it with you that day. I cannot imagine the pain you felt leaving there with that gift undelivered. Mom would be ashamed of me. I am ashamed of me. I do not expect your answer. I just needed you to know that I finally opened my eyes, although it came too late. I love you, Dad. I have always loved you, even when I acted like I did not. Emily. I finished reading with silent tears rolling down my cheeks. They were not tears of joy or immediate reconciliation. They were tears of mourning for what we could have been, for the lost years, for the destroyed relationship. I reread the letter that same afternoon, and again before sleeping. During the following days, I read it at least 10 times, looking between the lines for any trace of manipulation, of disguised excuses, of subtle attempts to get financial support. I found nothing of that. The letter was brutally honest, painfully self-aware. Emily had written from a place of genuine repentance, not from the desperation of needing rescue. That made it harder to process. If it had been a manipulative letter, I could have dismissed it easily. But this was different. This was a daughter who had finally matured, who had learned the hardest lesson, who had paid a terrible price for her mistakes. Rose called me a few days later. Emily told me she sent you a letter. Did you receive it? Yes. And what are you going to do? That was the question, right? What would I do? Call her immediately and start a reconciliation process. Ignore the letter completely. Something in between. I do not know yet, I admitted honestly. The letter is sincere, painfully sincere. But words are easy, Rose. What matters are actions sustained over time. Anyone can write a nice apology in a moment of crisis. It is true, agreed Rose, but it is also true that Emily is really changing. I have seen her. She left Michael, she is in therapy, working hard to support herself alone. She is not looking for you to rescue her. She is trying to become someone who someday deserves your forgiveness. Someday, I repeated. That is the key word. Not today, not tomorrow. Someday, if she demonstrates with facts for months, perhaps years, that she really changed, then will you leave the door open? Ajar, I corrected. Very slightly ajar, but she will have to do all the work to open it completely. I already did my part for 32 years. I kept the letter in a drawer of my desk. I did not answer it. I was not ready for that yet, but I did not destroy it either. December arrived with that particular golden light of winter, soft and melancholic. Exactly 6 months have passed since that June 15th that divided my life into a before and after. 6 months that feel simultaneously like an eternity and like a blink. This morning, while drinking coffee on my terrace, observing the ocean shine under the winter sun, I made a mental inventory of everything that had changed. Not only in my external circumstances, but fundamentally in who I am as a man. The Andrew who entered that hotel dressed in his best suit, carrying hopes and expensive gifts, no longer exists. He was a man who defined his worth by how much he could give, how much he could sacrifice, how much he could endure in silence. A man who confused generosity with weakness and love with complicity in his own destruction. The Andrew who writes these reflections today is fundamentally different. I have learned that protecting your dignity is not selfishness, it is survival, that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-respect, that some relationships, no matter how much blood they share, need to end for both parties to evolve. Yesterday I received a call from James, my lawyer and friend. He wanted to update me on a minor tax issue, but at the end of the conversation he told me something that stayed resonating in my mind. Andrew, we have been working together 15 years. I knew you as a competent man, but always worried, always sacrificing. These last months I see you different, lighter, more present. It is as if finally you stopped living to please ghosts and started living for yourself. He was right. For decades I lived tormented by self-imposed obligations. I had to be the best husband to honor Elizabeth. I had to be the perfect father to compensate for the absence of a mother. I had to sacrifice my dreams to finance Emily's. It was an invisible prison, but absolutely real. Emily's betrayal paradoxically broke those chains. Now my mornings begin with painting, not with worries about others' needs. My afternoons are spent teaching young entrepreneurs who really value my experience. My nights pass reading books. I always postponed watching movies. Elizabeth and I had planned to see together cooking new recipes just because I feel like experimenting. David, the 23-year-old boy I helped with his mobile repair shop, came to visit me last week. His business is going well. He has 3 employees now. He brought me a bottle of wine and a card that said thanks for believing in me when no one else did. That simple card gave me more satisfaction than all the years financing Emily's whims. Because David genuinely valued my support. He did not take it for granted. He did not humiliate me publicly after receiving my help. Regarding Emily, I maintain my position. The November letter remains kept in my desk. I have reread it occasionally, looking for signs of genuine change versus sophisticated manipulation. So far it seems authentic. But words are easy promises. What interests me are actions sustained over time. Rose keeps me informed discreetly. Emily finalized her divorce from Michael the first week of December. She lives alone in a small studio on the outskirts of the city. She works long hours, attends therapy weekly. She has not asked for money. She has not tried to contact me directly. She respects the boundaries I set. She is trying to become someone different, Rose told me the day before yesterday. I do not know if she will achieve it, but at least she is trying genuinely. I appreciate the effort. I recognize the growth. But I am not ready to fully reopen that door. Perhaps I never will be, and I have made peace with that possibility. I have learned something crucial about forgiveness. It is not a switch you turn off or on. It is a long process that requires not only repentance from the offender, but also deep healing from the one who was hurt. And more importantly, forgiveness does not mean automatic restoration of privileges, trust, or access to your life. I can forgive Emily eventually for what she did. I can reach a point where I do not feel pain remembering that banner, but that does not mean I will be her source of financial support again, her emotional safety net, the father who drops everything for her without expecting basic respect in return. If someday, after years of consistently demonstrated change, Emily and I rebuild some kind of relationship, it will be completely different. It will be a relationship between adults with clear boundaries, mutual respect, and real consequences for destructive behaviors. I will never again be the father who sacrifices infinitely while his daughter takes everything as an acquired right. This morning, while observing the sunrise from my terrace, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Gratitude for my life exactly as it is now. Not for what it could be if Emily returned. Not for what it was before the betrayal, but for this present moment with all its imperfections and its beautiful simplicity. I am 64 years old. Statistically, I have perhaps 20 good years of life left, maybe 25 if genetics favor me. I do not plan to waste a single one of those years living to please people who do not respect me. Not a single one waiting for apologies that perhaps never arrive with the depth they deserve. Not a single one being an emotional hostage of an adult daughter who must learn to support herself. My message for anyone reading this story is simple but powerful. Your dignity is not negotiable. True love includes healthy boundaries, and sometimes the most loving act you can do, both for yourself and for the other person, is to walk away and allow natural consequences to teach what words never could. Emily had a father who loved her unconditionally for 32 years. Now she has to learn to live without that resource exactly as a consequence of her decisions. And I have to learn to live for myself, rebuilding an identity I never had before, that of a complete man without the need to sacrifice for others to feel value. I look toward the future with serenity. There are trips I plan to take, paintings I want to create, young people who need mentorship, books I hope to read. There is a whole life waiting for me, and for the first time in decades, that life belongs completely to me. The 25-foot banner that declared I was not welcome ended up being a strange blessing in disguise. It forced me to wake up, to defend myself, to reclaim my dignity. It freed me from a toxic dynamic that I myself had allowed to perpetuate for years. So today, 6 months after the worst humiliation of my life, I feel freer, more alive, and more at peace than ever. And that, curiously, is the best revenge possible. Living well. If you liked this story, hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thanks for watching.